Hey everyone, this is Incoherent. This is Rome to the War Remastered Germania's post-mortem. My analysis and retrospective on the campaign, what I think of the faction, and what I find most interesting, how I was wrong about the faction, how it differed from my expectations. And for Germania, it's been a bit of a roller coaster, because geopolitically I kind of nailed exactly what they were, but militarily I couldn't have been more wrong. So, let's start with geopolitical. I said that Germania would start off in this area, and I thought they'd conquer rebels, defend themselves from Gaul and Britannia, push down into Italy, take over all of Italy, and then be a superpower poised to explode and conquer the whole world around them. Bingo bango, exactly what happened, dead on. I was wrong in some ways geopolitically though. Specifically, how hard I thought various things would be was wrong. First of all, I didn't recognize just how many rebel cities were around Germany. I basically surpassed the Seleucids in size very early on and became the largest faction because I took so many rebel cities. And that gives you a lot more economy than you would normally expect to be working with in this game. Next, in terms of how difficult it is to deal with Gaul and Britannia, it's really not that hard. I mismanaged it pretty aggressively. My army had to conquer Alesia and went south instead of moving to deal with the British threat. And that was at the same time as I was fighting the Julii and lost my first army to the Senate. If I had managed this differently in any of a number of different ways, then I could easily have never had that point in time where I was scattering to keep myself safe. And even then, despite feeling frantic, I was never in any massive danger. It was always well under control. So as a whole, I underestimated the strength of the German start, and how easy it was to deal with all of their rivals simultaneously. Hell, I was fighting Dacia too for some godforsaken reason, because they conquered this town and I wanted that town. That was pretty much it. So, geopolitically, they were more or less what I expected them to be. But militarily, good God, I couldn't have been more wrong. The thumbnail for this video is a line of berserkers. That's not what these armies are, though, is it? These armies are actually Hellenistic armies. Heavy cavalry, phalanxes, and range support. This one, I think, is one of the better examples. No, it's not. This one I've just made, is the best army I've ever produced. It's got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 units of heavy cavalry, 3 units of archers, 1 axeman, because I keep making them in the hopes that they'll be good, and then phalanx infantry corps. And honestly, this army would be clearly better if I had taken this guy and made him a spearman. The way these armies function is just like Hellenistic armies. Phalanx line, archers behind them, cavalry on the wings. When you compare these to Hellenistic armies, to Macedon's militia hoplites, and I can't find any just now, but yes, levy pikemen. The Phalanx Warband, which is, I will remind you, a unit that comes from a tier 1 barracks in a level 2 city, is a just clearly better unit. It might lose to a levy pikeman in a straight fight because they have shorter spears, but that's it. They have better morale, better attack, better alternate attack, better defense, better charge, better everything. And when you compare it to militia hoplites, it's even worse because they have 50% more men than militia hoplites would. The strength of these spear warbands actually makes them one of the best units, or factions rather, for Hellenistic wars. And in fact, I believe that so thoroughly that I'm going to go to the custom battle screens and check that out right now. So, to make it clear what I'm looking at, large towns and minor cities are going to be the vast majority of what you're dealing with. Which means you're going to have access to level 3 barracks, level 2 cavalry, and level 2 archery range relatively reliably in your armies. It's when you start moving past this that your army's not happening that often, that we start talking about late game armies where I no longer really care how good it would theoretically be, because it's not what you're going to be fighting most of your battles with. So, looking at this, they can train phalanx pikemen with a level 3. This is basically a study, whereas before then, this levy pikeman is actually their equivalent of town watch. The problem is that for Germania, their town watch is spear warband, and that's insane. When you look at the level 2 cavalry stables, I was right. It gives them light lancers. It does not give them Macedonian cavalry. That's a city-only thing, a large city. So I've made a comparison here for tier 2 and 3 buildings for all of these factions, and then I've made one for tier 3 stables Macedon. And it's actually hilarious. If you look at the comparative values of Spear Warband at 4, 9, 11 to any of these units, 258, 265, 265. It just trashes levy pikemen and militia hoplites in terms of stats. The worst part, though, is you're comparing your Barbarian Noble Cav, this is a Tier 2 Stables units, with 8 morale, 9 attack, 15 defense, 7 charge, to Greek Cavalry. 4 morale, 6 attack, 8 defense, 5 charge. It's not even close. It's landslide in favor of the Barbarians. Same thing, 4, 6, 8, 5. And for the Lancers, they're a little bit better, it looks like, at 8, 7, 5, and then 9 on the charge. And 9 on the charge is nice. It means that if you get a charge going with them, they're actually... Are they even better, offensively? 7 attack, 9 charge, compared to 9 attack, 7 charge. Okay, so on a charge, Lancers are equivalently powerful, but they have much worse morale and defense and are likely to break. They can't be used as effectively as Noble Cavalry can in a prolonged engagement. In terms of similar tier armies, Germania shits on all of the Hellenistic factions. What I want to compare it to, though, to put the nail in the coffin, is a better tier army. And I forgot to compare their archers, so let me do that briefly. So, when I compare archers, I'm not going to compare their defense, their melee attack, their morale, anything except missile attack, ammo, and range. And I want to make it clear that all of the basic archers do have terrible stats for everything except that. But if your Germanic chosen archer warbands were to get into a straight fight, they've got better melee stats than any of these phalanxes we've been talking about. 8 morale, 10 attack, 10 defense. They would just beat a spear warband in a fight if they weren't in phalanx formation. And I cannot emphasize that enough. These guys are actually viable in melee, and that's not even what we're comparing. So, missile attack 8, missile range 170. Those are the big two. And they have 50 more range and 1 more attack than basic archers from any of these factions do. And that 50 range is massive. That's 50% more range, almost. Just 10 less. In terms of ammunition, all of these are sitting pretty at 4,800, and the chosen archers have just a little bit extra. So they're slightly better ranged units, but they have much more range, which is very important. And if they do somehow get flanked, they're actually going to hold their own. Their cavalry is better. Their archers are better, and their spearmen at low tiers are better, by a lot. So let's compare it to an actual proper army. Macedon has a time to scale up. They're using proper phalanxes and Macedonian heavy cav. When you compare this Macedonian heavy cav, morale 8, melee 8, defense 17, morale 8, melee 9, defense 15, charge of 7 versus charge of 6. They're basically identical. This unit's very slightly better, but it's an entire tier above what Germania is doing. It is disgusting how good Noble Cavalry are. It's still equivalent. Your archers are still much better, and when you compare the pikemen, morale 4, melee 8, defense 13. Charge really doesn't matter for phalanxes. Morale 4, attack 9, defense 11. When you compare these two phalanxes, the actual tier 3 phalanx, this is a spear warband at tier 1 barracks, is able to go toe-to-toe with the phalanx in terms of stats. It's only 2 defense lower. It would lose in a straight fight, because they do have shorter spears. But against anything other than a proper phalanx, these units perform identically. It is absolutely insane how strong Germania's military is. Don't be lied to. All of this infantry isn't real. The Axemen don't do anything that makes them worth recruiting over just 50% more spear phalanxes. So you have Naked Fanatics and Berserkers, and those seem pretty cool, but they're from religious buildings. You can't conquer a city that can produce these. You have to spend 6 turns making infrastructure for Berserkers, 3 for Fanatics. Night Raiders come from Ends, which you could theoretically conquer, but no one builds them, and they're not better than Spear Warbands, which they probably had the ability to build. My thumbnail was of a field of Berserkers, but I never even had the ability to build one, because it was so obviously better to just play like Macedon. And now that I've played them like Macedon, it's dreadfully apparent that I'm not playing budget Macedon. For a long time, I was playing with just Spear Warbands and Barbarian Cavalry, and I was calling myself budget Macedon as a joke. But then I realized that Spear Warbands were better than the other phalanxes, and instead of this, I could use Noble Cav, which still only take 1 turn to recruit, and Chosen Archers, which are incredibly good. Like, let's compare them to Foresters from Gaul, which are the best archers in the game. Missile range 170, attack 11. So the difference is that they have 3 more attack. This is just a weaker version of the best archer in the game. It has the same range and, what is it? About 70% of the attack? And the Forester Warband is absolutely disgustingly strong. In case you don't believe me and you think Egypt is better, let's go quickly look at the Pharaoh's Bowman. Same range, less attack. So, yeah, just everything available to you as Germania is insane, and you get it so early. For a long time, when I was using the bad version of this army, I thought it was budget Macedon, but now that I realize this is an option, Germany isn't budget Macedon. They're just shirtless Macedon. They're just better Macedon. They're basically Chad Macedon when it gets right down to it. They are the strongest Hellenistic faction in the game, and I don't think I'm going to change that opinion as I play the Hellenistic factions. Because, like, looking at the Seleucids, this might all look really cool, but when you start the game, these are the units that you have access to. It's not very impressive. You aren't playing like a Hellenistic faction, you're playing like Militia Hoplites, or Javcav. This isn't at all the army that you get to play with when you start the game. But Germania? They started off with something close to this and very easily built into this. I feel no hesitation in saying that I think they are the strongest Hellenistic faction, despite the fact that they aren't a Hellenistic faction. They just have the exact same hammer and anvil playstyle. And admittedly, all factions have a hammer and anvil playstyle, but Hellenistic factions are the ones that sort of hyper-specialize into doing exactly that and don't really have much in the way of alternatives. This isn't quite the tier list you saw in Session 0. In Session 0, I didn't have Horse Archery tier yet, because I hadn't played as the Romans and had a chance to see how strong Scythian mercenaries were, and realized just how obviously overpowered these factions were. Egypt is just strong enough with their economic start and chariot archers that I think they might be an honorary horse archer. This is very tentative. But this positioning is still the same. I had Germany in B tier, which is fucking disgustingly wrong. Like I said, they're the best Hellenistic faction. They might have worse land than Macedon, but they expand so quickly and into so much that they become bigger than the Seleucids very early on. So the quality of their land doesn't matter. They just have enough that they become wealthy. They have better units than Macedon earlier, and later in the game, they're still going toe-to-toe with them. So they're at least better than Macedon. The real question becomes, are they better than Rome? And I mean, according to my campaign, yeah, I finished the campaign in several turns shorter, and the endpoint of the campaign feels much more well-poised for world conquest than Rome somehow, just because I have more armies and more economy pushing them. One of the biggest things that I think makes it feel more poised for world conquest than Rome is because as Germany, I'm just got so many more powerful generals, because you get things that are unique to barbarians in terms of retinues and traits that Rome didn't have access to, and it results in Germany having a lot of competent generals, which makes fighting wars on all fronts like you would for world conquest much easier. But honestly, even ignoring that, I do think they're better than Rome. They're absurdly powerful. It's to the point where I honestly wonder if it's possible for Germany to be an S tier with the horse archers. And I think the answer is no. It might get moved after I play the horse archer factions and I come to a conclusion about how correct horse archer tier is. But the fact that I'm not putting Germany in S tier, to me, means I have to pull Egypt down too. Whichever one of these Egypt goes into, I think Germany is going to be right behind Egypt. But yeah, I'm putting Germany right at the top of A tier with Egypt right now. I think that they are disgustingly powerful. I think they have an incredibly strong start, incredibly good early game units, and once you get to their late game, which as a barbarian is only a small city, you only need 6,000 population to get to their late game, chosen archers and barbarian noble cavalry are fucking insane. Some of the best archers and best cavalry in the game. And your basic bitch tier 1 spearman can be recruited anywhere in the world, and it can go toe-to-toe with pretty much any infantry in the game. They're incredible. However, looking at this, I do have some more adjustments I want to make on the fly. First, Dacia is going to continue its slow crawl to the bottom of the tier list every time I play a campaign. Because, honestly, having seen Dacia start this campaign so sadly, if there's a barbarian that should be in B tier, it's obviously Britain. Britain might have done terribly this campaign, but I've seen enough of their units to know that as a player, you can do better. I do think Dacia deserves to be down here with Spain, not Britain. But aside from that, there's no other adjustments I want to make on the tier list just yet. I'm confident putting Germany at the top of A tier, and if horse archers are worse than I think they are, then I'm going to be putting them up here in S tier with the horse archers in Egypt. But for now, this is my tier list, and I'm done thinking about Germania until such a time as I played every single faction and I upload a comprehensive tier list. I hope you enjoyed the series. I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about this faction. If you did, then please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. And either way, I'll see you in the next one.